good afternoon. So if you didn't get the memo, this is actually going to be a 30-minute nap session in which we're going to speak very monotone for the next 30 minutes and ensure everyone out. So thank you. I'll be here for 28 more minutes. So we are talking about design patterns. Okay, so talking about some processes, things you may already know, and hopefully we're going to give some lessons learned from our combined 75 years in the industry. 69 of them are his. So obviously I'm just here for comedic relief. I provide zero value otherwise. But the obligatory, here's all the ways that you can harass me online. All I ask is that there are GIFs involved, or GIFs if you prefer. Either way, I'm accessible.
Nice. So I'm Byron. I used to do stuff with computers. Now I design systems for people. And we're going to talk about that and what that looks like and how it can go terribly wrong. So when we talk about process, there's good ways and bad ways to do it. The thing about process and automation is it's a really good way to make bad things really, really fast. And there's ways to avoid that, so let's talk about them. So starting off, value stream mapping. It's probably my favorite thing I do. I do consulting for a living. I do it a lot for people. It's a really good way to get teams to understand how they work. The biggest problem I see is when I go into an organization and I say, how does this process work? How do you deliver this service? Because really, well, that's what you're doing every day is delivering some kind of service. And that service delivery process is what you really need to focus on. And you'll ask people, and they'll have some vague idea of like how the process works or should work in theory. There may be a wiki out there where they have like, this is what the process looks like, and a nice Visio diagram. And the problem is those are completely useless. Those are never how work actually gets done. How people get things done is they call up somebody and they say, hey, Bob, I need a thing done. And Bob does the thing, and poof, magic, I have the thing I need. What they don't realize is Bob has this black box of like 23 processes that Bob has to go through and steps to actually get this thing done, that because it's not transparent to the person making the request, they have no idea what really goes into making this happen. So why do a value stream map? What is it? Really, it's just going through and figuring out all the steps and all the people involved in delivering a service and the time involved. And the time comes in two different ways. You basically wait time and actually like task time or time on task. The idea is to eliminate the waste of that wait time. Time in queues, time where work is not getting done. Also, to find out redundant tasks and redundant tooling that you have to take those out and make it so you can deliver things as fast as possible without things dying in queues for weeks on end. So who should really come to a value stream mapping exercise? And the answer is everyone involved, but not at the same time. Because when you get people and their managers in a room, they tend to say things they want their managers to hear that may not be true, and you get really bad results. But you want everyone involved just in separate meetings or separate iterations of the process. Then take that all together, try to get the most honest representation of how work is being done. When you have people with conflicting interests or priorities or teams, do it separate and then bring them all together at the end and say, look, this is what all this process looks like all together. That's going to give them the best understanding of why things are so slow or messed up or not happening right. So when you start off with a value stream map, it's going to look something like this. And you can tell that you're at the beginning for a number of reasons. First off, there's no time here. There's like, here's all the tasks that we're doing. Okay, well, how long does it take? You have to go through and actually make sure that you write for each of these boxes your cycle time and your time on task. It's also very linear. There's lots of boxes on a single thread, and there's not a lot of iteration here. There's not a lot of feedback cycles. At the end, it should look something like this, where you see a lot more iteration, a lot more feeding back upon itself, fewer tools involved, and really shorter processes in several threads. That's ideally what you're going to want to get to. The problem here is once you have this map, it's not enough. You put it on a wiki, make a run book, and it'll go to somewhere to die. You need to use this as a method of change in your organization to say, okay, now that we know what this process should be, incentivize it. You can have some gamification or other ways to change behavior, but don't just put it on a wiki and forget about it. Once you make this map, actually use it to affect the process change to get things better.
Test automation. So this is something that I either do very, very well or do very bad. I've never been in between. with test automation. So first part is what kind of test do we want to run, right? So we know that there's a lot of tests. I always talk about unit testing a lot at work because this tends to be I don't want to say a problem for us, but it tends to be a pain point a lot of times. But unit testing is something I'm very passionate about, and I've been very passionate about my entire life because I was the kid who used to take things apart, and I was convinced if I took it apart, I would know how all of these components work, and then I would be better at doing whatever that was, which is exactly what I did with the Polaroid 600 camera and never got it back together, and my sister is still mad at me 20 years later. So, and then of course, because the goal is to put it back together and then make sure the camera still works. And now I'm immediately a better photographer because I understand all of the components. At least that's how my brain worked at 9. But the goal was for me to do the unit testing and then functional testing. At work, we tend to do the functional testing and then go, well, probably everything works at a unit level because it worked higher, right? Another big thing that we need to do more of is our integration testing. I work for a company who is like, we are an API-first platform. And in fact, we have the APIs before we had the UI, before we even had the file system. Then we go, cool, what can I do with it? We go, whatever you want. Yes. The use cases are unlimited. And they go, well, have you tested it with ServiceNow? And we're like, maybe. You know, we don't have a good answer a lot of the time when it comes to what else can it work with, right? We go, well, it's API first, everything, right? Anything that can consume a RESTful API, we're good. But we never actually go back and verify that. And then, of course, hey, now I've made a change. Does it still work, right? Does everything still work? Do all of my features and functions still operate the way that they should because I made a code change? But I come more from an architectural background. So when I start thinking about, okay, I want to do some testing, the first thing is, well, what's the framework going to look like? And more importantly, what is my design criteria and my success criteria? So for the company that I work for, these are the criteria that we used, right, when it comes to designing that framework and to automate it, right? And the big thing is, for us, simplicity. Is it easy to use? Because I, unlike all of my colleagues, did not go to Stanford, so I need it to be easier for me. A website that I frequently use, it's basically my homepage at this point, United Airlines. Who has purchased an airline ticket ever? Wait, we all have. Who has ever used a piece of software? You go, wow, this really works well, but the UI is complete and utter garbage. Okay, so this is actually a huge improvement compared to what the United website used to look like. But when you look at, for example, something like the United website, how do I test that? Well, I need to think about it and put myself as a user. And that's where it becomes difficult sometimes for us who are in the engineering side of things to go, well, what would the user do and how would this look like for the user? So for me, I want to search. And then I want to be able to sort my flights based off of whatever my criteria is. And I better get those results. Right? That's why I use Hipmunk now for booking flights, because while it's searching, I get to see like the chipmunk do the dance. I'm like, haha, humored. And then I go through and I look at those flight details, right? Because now I want to go, hey, are there aisle seats available in Economy Plus? Because I'm not sitting in the middle on Economy. And then I'm going to put in my passenger information, and some of that is PII, right? And then I'm going to put in my payment, and then I'm going to ideally get a confirmation back. Now, what is the success criteria? Right? The success criteria is that I'm able to sort the flights and even get flights back, choose it, submit my payment securely, and then get that confirmation. Because for me, as soon as I get the confirmation, I have a rule in my inbox that says forward to Expensify, right? So those are very important for me, and we need to think about that as the user. So how does this look, right? Our lovely test pyramid. Because what we tend to do as engineers is we focus so much on the technology-facing tests, and we forget to do the business testing, right? The business-facing tests. And that's where a lot of software fails, in my opinion, is we just all raised our hand and said, yes, this software works, and it works well, but the UI is total garbage, right? Or, hey, it's not easy to sort. It gives me the information, but I can't do this, right? So we have to really think about it from a different angle. And what are those design criteria, right? So if we go, okay, well, when I think about what that design criteria is going to be, right, security. I'm submitting payment information. I'm submitting PII. Performance. How long does it take to get those results back, right? If that website goes down, well, then what, right? We've all remembered the British airline. I don't know why I'm talking about airlines so much. Now you know what I think about constantly. It's like, I wonder if my flight's on time. British Airlines was down for how long? They were down, like, what was it, last year for a little over 24 hours, and they lost something like $100 million in revenue because of it. That's a problem. Did we think about that? And then, of course, accessibility. This is the framework that we use at my company. And I'm going to be perfectly honest, there is manual steps. And for us, it's the UI. And that is because we say that our UI is better than all of our competitors, right? Bold, bold. I work in a backup and recovery company. It's really boring. And backup and recovery is not cool. So if we're like, the UI is really easy to use and there's APIs, people are like, tell me everything. So it's really important that we actually, for us, go through the UI step by step manually like a user would do to make sure that it is operational. So there is a team that's dedicated to manually verifying that. Everything else for us is automated. Release engineering. What is the goal? Get it done faster, right? Go from dev to ops quickly. This is what it looks like, right? Is this what it looks like for everybody? Okay, is this what it looks like for everybody? Okay, I don't believe you guys. Is this what it looks like for everybody? Okay, so now we're all on the same page. It's not fun. It's not fun at all. So there's a lot of ways that we can do it. But when I think about release engineering, when I think about test automation, the thing that I go back to all the time is the word simple, right? Simplicity. Because I subscribe to the idea of like the Cynefin Framework where when things first emerge, they're chaotic and we just do before we think. And the goal is always to get to simple, where we're thinking and feeling before we act, right? Or kind of an OODA loop type thing if that's more your speed. But we have to address the human factors, and that's where it becomes very, very difficult. But we want to simplify the architecture. Because I want it to look like this, right? The goal, of course, one day is I'm going to speak at a DevOps, I'm going to show this lovely picture, and then we're all going to go, yeah, that is what it looks like, right? So how do we do that, right? First thing is always setting proper expectations of what this is going to do, how it's going to work, and more importantly, who's going to be affected by it in terms of consuming the actual software. And then, of course, when it comes time to release, how are we going to do it, right? How are we going to do it, and especially if we do something like blue-green, what is that switch going to look like? And are we going to automate it? And what happens if that fails? Then what, right? So those are the questions that we need to be asking. Ooh, I broke it. There we go. So at my current employer, we do canary testing, okay? So for us, we try to advertise as being this like cool, sexy thing that like, hey, you're gonna get early access, okay? And you're gonna be able to test out all these really cool features. So marketing really pushes signing up for an early access, but realistically, it's maybe 10% of our customers that do it. But we give them early code, and they basically do some testing and prod, if you will, for us, right? We get a lot of feedback. And the goal is during that 6-week cycle of it being an EA, that we go back and we fix the code that we didn't catch in testing, which we should have, and we didn't. And then after that period, then we go into a DA and then a GA, right? And the DA period is very, very short. And so during that time period, that's when we cut over to everyone and we push that code across. Alternatively, what I have done in the past is blue-green, right? Where basically everyone's accessing, for example, green, and then in the blue scenario, I am doing my development, I'm doing my testing, and then I cut over everyone at once, right? Once it's prepared. The consideration here and the difficulty here is the switch, right? Like what I was saying earlier. So it's really important that you test that thoroughly and make sure that it works and automate it. Nobody wants to be the person being like, I'm gonna press it now. I'm gonna press the button and then everybody's gonna use it. It's gonna be really scary. Just automate it, right? Automated gates as much as possible. Change management.
Yeah, so this is my favorite topic. No one else's, but mine, it's cool. What's the fastest way to kill velocity? That is to start a change board. Because change boards suck, let's be totally honest. You have a bunch of people who have no idea what the change is about or what it does, and they're like, huh, should we change it? No, because stability reasons, and I get paid on SLAs, so every change is a bad, and we try to kill it.
You sound like a consultant. I get paid on SLA.
Yeah, right? No, it's like, everyone who runs a data center is being paid for stability, or at least they should be being paid for stability, and they don't want to change things, and so they do their best to slow things down and kill the change. Let's talk about it and do more testing and all this stuff when all you want to do is ship your code. So there's ways to get around this. And the weird part is it's to work with the change board and like become friends with them and talk to them and say, hey, we're gonna do a bunch of changes real fast and we need to find a way that you're gonna be cool with that. And the answer really is to integrate them as much as possible into your automated pipeline. Get them to certify your pipeline, test but verify, but make sure to say, hey, if we use this pipe and everything goes through this and we do all these steps, are you cool with the change? Because you trust it. And the answer, first off, is straight up no. Absolutely not. So you go, okay, well, we'll keep doing change tickets. We'll use the pipe, and after 3 months when everything has worked great, because our testing is awesome and nothing is broken in prod, do you trust us now? Okay, how about now we have standard changes as opposed to high-risk changes for all these things that we're trying to ship? Okay, you like ITIL? We'll go with that method, because they all like ITIL a lot, and say, let's have change classification for high levels of change, low risk. So always come back to risk and how you can use risk in your, to benefit you. Saying, let's make everything by default a low-risk change, a standard change. And because of that, we say, how about we have automatic approvals for standard changes because they haven't broken 3, 6, 9, 12 months. When you get them to certify the pipeline, you're gonna be able to really achieve velocity that the cab is historically blocked for everyone. But you have to make change a priority. You have to go to your cab or whoever runs your change process and say, hey, we want to work with you, and they will be surprised, and then they might call you back. But you have to be proactive. They're not going to go and say, hey, you have a pipeline, let's certify that for change, and make your life easier. You have to be proactive here. You have to get them involved early in the stage, get them to show that change is a priority for you to make their lives easier. And you really have to go back to ITIL principles here, which is something that we try to avoid saying that those are the old way, but they've still, when it comes to change, they're your friend. Embrace them, go with different risk levels, learn what a standard change looks like, what a high-risk change looks like, and embrace that as part of your change process. And the biggest part here is you really need to certify the pipe. If you can get them to have faith in what you're doing and faith in your automated process, that is when you're going to really drive high-speed change. Thanks. That's our time.